Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with American Scouser. It's Wednesday, Hump Day, so I'm going around being the greatest dad that I always am on Wednesdays. And with us, another great dad, Gordo's with us. What's up, man?
I'm pretty good. I'm not the one of the great dads. I'm the second greatest dad, I think.
Well, I mean, you don't want to set the bar that high, my friend. I'm when I'm around, but yeah. And with us, making an appearance first time in a long time and rocking the brand new jersey is Rami. What's up, man?
What's going on, guys? It's good to be back. It's been a long time, so happy to be here and just contribute any way I can. And yeah, jersey came in this morning, like I was telling Tim, so I was like, got to rock it for the show.
Dude, initially, like before I put you on the bigger screen in the background, I was like, did we lose him to Chelsea too? Because it looked more blue than purple. So like when you were like a small thumbnail when you first joined the broadcast, like in the green room, I was like, holy shit! In the last second, they grabbed Rami as well.
They offered me an 8-year contract. I had to go. So.
Elders with us. Good morning. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say normally I'm like, hey, there's a lot to get to. There is a lot of crap to get to, I guess. A lot of we were talking right before we went on air. It's like a rumor site's wet dream over here where they can just Google defensive midfielders and link us to them. There's a lot of names being thrown around, so I'm just gonna throw some names at you too. I just want to get your guys' take on where you are with it. The biggest one that this is kind of gonna be more interesting to me than anything else is Tyler Adams. Gordo, let's start with you because you just made a face even when you heard the name. So where are we at?
So,
is the American bias gonna come out? That's what I'm waiting on.
When he's wearing the red, white, and blue, I love the guy. I love him. I think he's great for that squad. Just to avoid any more embarrassment and being linked to Chelsea, picking up the scraps from that team would be just the epitome of this transfer window, and I think that would sit very poorly with a lot of fans, and we would definitely be the joke over on the blue side of London. So I would avoid that just to be like, oh yeah, we'll take the guy that you don't want, the guy that you released. Just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, it almost seems like a pity signing too. You're like, well, why don't you come over here then? You're like, they didn't pick you. Why don't you come over here?
We'll take your choice.
Yeah, I don't know.
Numbers are thrown around. I know Matush was putting a chart in Discord this morning. I mean, I guess my thing is more reliability, and there's a slight bias on this side. I don't know if it's being talked as much on that side as on this side, but where are you at with it?
Yeah, he's one of those players that there's a lot we've been linked to recently where it's like if him and somebody else come in, I'd be okay with that. But just him by himself, it's not ideal. Yeah, like one of you mentioned, the price it's kind of a low price, but Bournemouth is apparently making a move for him, and if we're competing with Bournemouth for transfer targets, I'm not sure that's the best telling sign. So yeah, I think there's definitely a player there, and I wonder if he's a bit overrated just because of his nationality being American and all. But like I said, there's definitely a player there, but there's also a reason why nobody's really triggered that release clause, considering, like I said, except for Bournemouth. So yeah, I wouldn't mind if we bring him and somebody else in, but just him by himself is not going to solve any of our problems, I don't think.
I mean, that's a good point in some ways. If he was the other signing, like if you got Lavia and Adams or something like that, he was brought in as insurance. But I guess my biggest concern with him is the injury history. First of all, I mean, he's injured now. And it's a hamstring thing, which means he can easily come back, and he's already missed a ton of time, and you don't know when he's going to be back. And we had a similar thing with Diaz when oh, is he back, is he not back? I guess that's my biggest concern, Gordo, is we would sign him and we would be in the same situation we're now because he'd be hurt anyway. So it's going to be somebody to hang out with Thiago in a month or so in the physio room. So how much would you be willing to spend?
Yeah, we don't need any more people in there, I think.
So, second name, Decore. Rami, let's start with you on this one because that's I don't know. His name was around first when the Lavia deal was going south, it looked like. So his name was thrown around then, but then we got Caicedo and stuff, so totally got him forgotten about. Now we're going back to our old girlfriends and like pulling up numbers, doing booty calls. Hey, look, we got an appearance.
Yeah.
I'm amazed he's not wearing the jersey too.
Yeah.
Where are you with Decore?
I'll be honest, I'm not gonna pretend like I've watched a ton of him, seen a ton of him play, but from what I know, it's he was Palace's Player of the Year last season. And I've watched some Twitter compilations of with dubstep music playing over it or whatever. But he seems like a good player. He seems kind of like what we need, just somebody like a destroyer in the midfield, just diving into those tackles, making those last ditch efforts, playing right in front of the defensive line. So I think in terms of fit, I think it's a good player. But the question is he good enough to make that step up and be the Fabinho replacement right away? Whether he is or not, I don't know. But for some of the prices, like seeing like. Obviously we're in an inflated market now between the Caicedo deal and teams knowing that we have that money. But I'm seeing like 70, 80 million pounds. And I'm just like, I don't know if he's that type of player. So, I definitely think, like I said, he has the qualities and the attributes of, I think, what we're looking for. But whether he's worth that price and whether he can make that elite jump is a whole different question.
That's the thing. When his name first came up, it was 40-50. And I remember even then I was like, really 40-50 for Decore? And now they are talking 70-80, Gordo. Is that even feasible?
In this market, and they know that Liverpool not only has at least 110 million to spend, and we're very desperate because we've been embarrassed. I think that they can name their price, and we're going to have to pay it if we want to fill that spot, which is unfortunate. We played our hand, and now we're kind of exposed in that sense. And we got to paper over the cracks, and they know that as well as we do. So I think they can basically name their price. And honestly, that Caicedo and Rice going for 100 million, that really inflates the market. I mean, those guys aren't bad players, but 100 million for those guys, it's a little ridiculous. And so I think that the transfer market dictates the rest of the players too, because other teams go, well, we'll look at the stats, and our players fairly similar to those two guys, and they just went for 100 million. So I think we can get similar to that, which is unfortunate, because that's the other thing is that the teams that have money just continue to inflate the market because they'll pay whatever they want to, and it screws everybody else over because now everyone values those players at what the cities and the Chelseas can pay.
Yeah, that's something like we do have the panel show tonight. That's one thing like I wanted to ask the guys, because we will have a fan from Fulham, Villa, and Arsenal. And we can then blame the Arsenal guys for Rice signing. But, I mean, I wanted to see their take, because I know earlier in the season when we talked to the Fulham guys, that's one thing they were talking about then, like, the prices and being able to compete for smaller clubs becoming more and more difficult. And that was before this saga, which has brought up the prices even more. I guess, so what is the right price for him, Rami? And would we pay an elevated price? I mean, we're not, despite, being desperate, like Gordo is saying, we're not really known for spending above and beyond the valuation, because if we did, Lavia would be a red right now.
Exactly. That's a good point. I would guess somewhere in that, like you said, 40-50 million range, kind of like what Lavia went for. But like you said, we were willing to spend 110, 115 for Caicedo, but not 50 for Lavia. So like I said, we're not going to get bent over a barrel. It doesn't matter who it is. And so that's kind of my concern. I could see us very well just being like, oh, there's no value in the market. We're going to wait till January, or, wait till next season because we don't have the right player. Like, we've all heard those lines before. And you were even mentioning it before in the when we were backstage or whatever, that Bajcetic and Thiago could come back and put in performance, and the club's like, oh, you know what, we can maybe hold off with just these two until January. So, like I said, I don't think we'll get ripped off in the market. That's not really what we do. It just, the concern is there value here so we can bring somebody in? And there's even a quote from Jurgen Klopp yesterday. I don't know like how true it is, but he's basically said the same thing. He's like, I think it was Fabrizio Romano who might have said it, but it's like basically that Liverpool is not going to just sign anybody. They're going to sign the right player. And for us, the right player for 2 years was Jude Bellingham, and then we'd even end up getting him. So, it's one of those things where it's like, I'd like to give the club the benefit of the doubt, but they haven't really earned that based off the past, 18 months or so.
Yeah, it's not on the right player. The right player has to be at the right price. It has to be like what we value him at, seems like. And that's why I do not see us spending the 70-80 on him. But at the same time, Gordo, will Crystal Palace, like you said, they might be like, that if that guy's 100, this is an easy 70 or something like that. But they can also say, I mean, I mean, you never know. Chelsea might come in again, sign like the 18th midfielder, but nobody else is going to come in and be like, 70, I'll take it. So his value is going to still be 40, 50, or whatever it is. Will Crystal Bells bend, or are we going to be like, we'll give you 40, take it or leave it?
That's a difficult one because they could probably still use him, right? So they don't need to get rid of him. I mean, that's the big question mark is can Crystal Palace retain his services, and they definitely can. So they might be fine. You don't want to pay this. We'll keep him on our books.
Yeah, that's fair. Mitsu says meant to be. I'm assuming he's talking about Adams. I never the Shaq went to Stoke before Liverpool, so I don't think it doesn't matter which other clubs are going after him. I agree there, but yeah, and then rotational piece was I agree. Like I said, I still don't. I'm not. It's a to have a rotational piece, they have to be available, and I really worry about that injury record and not being available. And last thing we want this. I mean, we don't even know if we're going to sign one guy, leave alone two guys, and I don't want that one guy to be like an injury risk. And I think that's like the main issue here. It's always finding the missing puzzle piece and not the price tag, Kelly says, and I agree. And that's the thing, we want to spend what we want to spend and not what people want. So Harry, who's actually going to be joining us, says, are we partly paying to play the likes of McAllister, Jones, and Gakpo where they should play? So that's the thing now, Gordo. I mean, you're not only getting a player, you're able to get everybody where they should be. But will we pay that price, or are we going to be like, Vesetic will do the same thing? But I drew up a disaster scenario the moment the Slavia and Kaiser deal was done. And that is, we don't do anything, right? We go against Bournemouth, like Thiago's already practicing. Thiago shows up. We're like, see, we're fine. And then, we beat Bournemouth. And then we play Newcastle. They're like, oh, maybe we're not fine. But, it's too late now. So we get a dude like Joe or something in the likes of Arthur or Davies, a signing like that we never even see when everybody's injured. Gakpo is going to play midfield instead of this dude playing midfield. And kind of like Rami says, we wait for January or next summer just because we're like, it's too expensive over here. And we walk out of the store.
Yeah, you guys wouldn't like to see another Joe Allen?
I would think Joe Allen.
The Welsh Messi? Come on. No, and that is the most difficult piece to it, and that's what I'm struggling with is the history of our transfer window and what's needed. I mean, I really think that this is the point in time where we see if FSG is backing Klopp to be successful or if they're trying to make money. Because right now, Klopp needs that guy to slot in to allow those other players to play in their natural positions, and it might cost us way more than we're willing to spend. But if FSG puts the money into somebody, and it's somebody that Klopp values and can use and utilize and is healthy, then we see that there is backing there, and they're being smart with their money as well as trying to make Klopp successful. Otherwise, I mean, this could be his last season with us if he doesn't get this backing. We have to wait until January. And then again, in this league, if you lose 2 games in the first half of the season, you've lost the title already. That's where we're sitting at, because right now the way the league is shaping up is, will Man City beat themselves? And that's it. Can anyone else compete with Man City? And Man City is really the only team that can do that for anybody else. Will Man City drop the points? That's all we're talking about now. And so we find out that January is too late in this league.
Yeah, I mean, January is definitely too late for a title run. I mean, if somebody's coming in by then, you've lost way too many points. And even this week, I felt like this weekend, if we had a starting defensive midfielder, like Fabinho was still around, heck, even Hendo was still around as a defensive midfielder, and you could play McAllister and Soboslai and Gakpo where they should be, I think we win this game. But this guy is going around. I mean, this is hard to compete with over here, Rami. But I'll tell you what, if you have a great show today, I am getting you a Rolex at the end of the show. So you think we're starting at American Scouser over here. Just freaking passing him around, baby. I mean, it's hard to compete with this. But do you think if we had any serviceable defensive midfielder, not necessarily one that's good or so, by pushing, going back to what Harry is saying, by pushing everybody to where they should be, does that almost elevate the level of defensive midfielder you are getting?
Yeah, I'm almost certain it does because McAllister, as great of a player he is not really a six. Trent in this new system needs that cover. I think it really would just elevate people. We can put like Gakpo up front, not play him as a eight or whatever he was really playing this weekend. So I think it just gets the best out of everyone. And like somebody mentioned in the chat, I think that in itself is worth whatever we pay. But the question is, we still just need to find the right value. And I know it's not like our money or whatever, but you just don't want to end up like Manchester United a few years ago, where teams knew that they could basically just rip them off.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what Liverpool, like the decision makers' biggest fear is that, if you pay it once, next time you go to the negotiating table, you're going to be asked to pay it again. So I think as much as, we want just to sign whoever, I think the value, like you said, is really going to come in just playing everybody in their natural position, getting Jones in his natural position. Saba's like, I don't even know what his natural position really is yet. I don't know if we've seen enough of him, whether it's on the right or on the left or whatever, but he was kind of playing deeper at times and stuff. So I think just once we kind of get that midfield sorted, the team will look a lot more fluid, and this new system that we're playing will really start to come together. But until then, we're kind of, what's the word, fitting square pegs into round holes. And I don't know how effective that's going to be when you're, like you mentioned, going up against City or even an improved Arsenal or Chelsea with their billions spent. You kind of need to be from the get-go on it. So my hope is we get this sorted out within the next 2 weeks, but the struggle is we've now left until the season started. So teams are going to be a lot more reluctant to let their players go once, a few games have been played or whatever. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, we're kind of putting the other team. It would have to be a luxury for them now to be able to sell, because more than likely, I mean, you would think most clubs have like a scouting thing going on. They're like, if we sell this guy, I guess we'll get this guy instead. I think one of the things that I saw over the weekend is it was very clear that you had two attack-minded attacking guys playing midfield. And not only that, not very clear on their positioning. I think you can get away with it, and you can have Soboslai eventually fit into that role. But having Gakpo next to him makes it more difficult. If you had McAllister and a defensive midfielder behind them, I think it makes life a lot easier for Soboslai as well. You can see he's a pressing machine, but you can also see he was a little lost at times in terms of like positioning and stuff like that too. So your gut feeling over here, Gordo, 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks on the dot and a day, I guess. But do we get somebody that's just a Joe or an Arthur, or do we actually get a player that is going to kind of keep us in contention?
History tells us we fill it with a player that we basically rides the bench, and we may never see. That's what history says. But I'm hoping that chips are on the table. It was very obvious against Chelsea that we need somebody there. We're definitely missing that piece. I'm just hoping that this is the time that, we've made really decent money over the last 5 years. Like, let's fucking use it now, because we really need it. So I'm hoping that we get somebody like an actual starter, but history tells us it won't be.
I mean, there are players like Sangare and stuff like that being talked about too, with like lower release clauses. But whenever I feel like whenever we're linked with somebody for over 30 days, there's a reason why we didn't sign him, and we're not going back to him. Unless we're like really have bids and stuff like that in them and really going after them like we did with Van Dijk and stuff like that. Or Alisson was another example that we're like, oh, we're not interested. Oh, look, he's on the plane. But I just don't know if you're going to go back to a guy what we didn't all this time. Rami, what is your gut feeling? What do we have coming our way?
Yeah, this whole window, I've kind of felt like we've had something up our sleeve. And so I'm wondering if that was Caicedo, if that was our ace up the sleeve that we were trying to play. I still kind of feel that way, like we have somebody in mind, or we're just waiting to get the green light. And I don't think it's to be any of the names we've been linked to be honest. Like Doucouré, like we mentioned, I kind of like his profile, but at his price, I just don't see it happening. And so, like I said, my gut feeling is just going to be a name that we haven't been linked to yet. And maybe not all the fans will be happy with it, or they will be, who knows. But I think we do bring somebody in. The question is, do we bring in a defender and another midfielder too, or if that defensive midfielder is our only signing we make? That's what I'm kind of curious about. Because if we do bring in, those three signings, I think the team is in a lot better shape than if we just bring in that one defensive midfielder or nobody, like you guys mentioned. So I'm not expecting like an Arthur Mello, not expecting Jay Spearing to be promoted from the youth academy, wherever he's doing. But like whether like I said, fulfills expectations, I don't know. That's going to be the hard part to determine. So we'll see. We'll see what
Yeah, so it
happens.
says FSG and club should ignore the theory of saying this player is expensive. They can negotiate to avoid more reimbursement. But while I agree that the need is there, I think it goes back to what Rami was talking about earlier. You become United. You pay a bazillion dollars for a guy like Anthony, who seems very average, like seems like an average winger, really, when you look at it, just keeps doing the same thing and doesn't do the defensive work and stuff like that. You end up overpaying for players because people know you need him and you're in the market for him and you got to make a purchase. It's almost like you went out shopping, you can't come back home empty ended kind of a deal. And I really don't want that either, but there has to be like a happy medium. Meanwhile, people are handing out Rolexes over there, and there are rumors going around that obviously after this weekend, you kind of knew the more rumors that kind of happened last week after he was subbed out. We're going to kind of start again because it took him like 10 minutes to rip off the tape from his hand. So you knew that was going to go south. And then now the rumors are Ellison as well. Are these just rumors, Rami, or should we hold on to our Rolexes? What's happening?
I think for Mo, it's definitely a rumor. I know the what's called the paper or the journalists that are coming out of Egypt saying this stuff. They just basically want clicks. Yeah, they're reliable for Egyptian players like the Egyptian league, but they don't know anything about Mo Salah or his inner business. So when people saw, oh, it's an Egyptian paper kind of reporting this, they kind of freaked out. And so I'll tell you firsthand that it's not reliable. That was not the face of a player who is willing to just go into retirement and kick his feet up. That's a player who still wants to be at the top and win things. So I don't think there's any. And even his agent came out and said he's not going anywhere. So I think Mo is going to be here for at least one more season. Alisson's the one I'm a little bit more concerned about. I think he's going to be here. But the question is, like, you see all his Brazilian buddies like Firmino and Fabinho and Firmino go in there, and just these guys that he's, I'm sure they've topped, and he's like, oh, what's it like over there? And they might be giving him like, hey, I just got a Rolex after a game, man. Where else does that happen?
Yeah, like Fred is like, check this out, baby. Like,
yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're in his ear, like, hey, man, Liverpool's, playing in Europa League. Might as well just come here and make, more money than you've seen in your life and this and that. So that's the one I'm kind of more concerned about because it does seem like they're targeting a lot of like Brazilian, Portuguese speaking players. I'm not sure what the correlation is there, but I could definitely see Alisson, maybe not this season, but like I said, sometime in the near future, that's the type of move he can make.
I think, those players, I mean, from that neck of the woods play kind of like a brand of soccer that's more appealing to the eye than getting a guy from Denmark who plays a lot more plain and solid and maybe technically solid as well, but not as pleasing to the eye. And that's why, when there were the rumors going around, we talked over here, we're like, who the heck is going to want Henderson? He's definitely staying here kind of thing. Cause we felt, and I still say if it wasn't for Stevie, it would be like, he would not be gone. I don't think any other club is going to be like, oh, yeah, that's the guy we need, that kind of a thing. Sparky not only says Salmo, all pro footballers I know they can afford Rolexes, but it's not a bad ordeal to get that instead of somebody's like scarf. When you play in most leagues, on your way out, somebody might give you a scarf or gloves they made, but you rarely get Rolexes. And if that's getting a Rolex is like kind of like a side gig, that's pretty darn good. I'll take that gig anytime. Alisson, honestly, when these moves started happening, that was my initial concern, and there was no rumors about him at all, Gordo. And I was like, who's going to be his buddy now? Because all his buddies are gone. Do we have to go get this Andre guy? Like, it's like we need a Brazilian stats, and then we get somebody, because it just did feel like he lost his group.
Yeah, and that's a big thing with the Brazilians. We had such a core group, and you always saw them together, and their families hung out together, and they celebrated their holidays together, and I think that makes a player feel at home. And when you lose that, and especially when you lose it in such a quick, short amount of time, it's not just him that's uncomfortable, but now it's his family that's uncomfortable. And every time he goes home from training, he's got that in his ear at his home life. And so maybe they're looking for a move too. I mean, he's won everything he's won with us, and maybe we win that Europa League, and he goes, yep, thank you. I've basically won everything I can.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that too, like next summer kind of an ordeal, but I just don't know if. So, Rami, do you think these guys that go there, I mean, obviously we see it, like Bobby had a hat trick and stuff, while life on the pitch might be easier and everything, in terms of lifestyle and everything like that. What is your gut feeling like when Fab? Maybe Fab is not a good example because he's got the Rolex in his hand. When Bobby talks to Ali on the phone, Allison, and says, "What?" He was like, "Dude, just stay there. You're good." Or he was like, "You should check this place out." Like, which one do you think he's getting from players that are going to that league? I know it's early in the going, but
Right. I'm sure like he's probably hearing like what no matter what the money's worth it. Because I'm sure they're like, oh, you can take care of your family back home or just like do things like that. And on top of that, it's like my guess is with the Saudi league is a lot of players are going to use it kind of like as a gap year, go there for a year, make 100 million or whatever more money than you would have seen in your career, and then go back to Europe. So maybe they're telling him, hey, you're still good enough to do that. Go come here for a year, get your check, and then go back. Because I think like cognitive dissonance is kind of strong. They don't want to start talking crap on the Saudi league when they're still playing there. They want to be like, oh, it's the best league in the world and this and that, like guys like Firmino and stuff, because they don't want to crap on the league that they're playing in. So I think in my opinion, I think they're probably telling Allison good things. And even if it's just from a selfish reason, maybe they want to hang out with their buddy again and be like, oh, come sign with us. I miss you or whatever. So I'm sure like that's in the back of his mind. I'm sure they're not like, oh, don't come here or whatever, because if that were the case, players still wouldn't be going there. Neymar wouldn't be signing there. Fabinho wouldn't have signed after Firmino. Henderson, I know we said Gerrard's kind of the influence, but Henderson probably wouldn't have gone. So there's obviously something there that's drawing the players. And obviously the money is a big part of it. Yeah.
money and Rolexes, I think.
Right. Yeah. But there's something that's keeping them there more, is what I'm trying to say. That's like, if it was one or two guys, there's a lot of guys that are, you can draw them with money, but there's a lot of guys who, money isn't everything. Like I said, Henderson, like you'd think he would, prioritize other things over money. So like I said, there has to be something there that's appealing to, whether it's the lifestyle or whatever. So I definitely think there's some merit there. Well, the question is, I think a lot of players have to decide, is it money or is it ambition? Is it legacy? Like, what do they value? And, we'll see what Allison's priorities are based on, what happens in the future.
I mean, yeah, Elias obviously has a lot more years and he's like, in great form as opposed to, like Fabinho, we didn't know what we were going to get this year, right? And it's kind of like, we're both Chicago guys here, Gordo. Like if you were both living downtown and having a great old time, then I move out to the suburbs and I'm like, dude, you should come here. It's great so that we can hang out together again. I'm like, there's no traffic. It's not as bad and stuff like that so that I can get you over here. But what is your gut feeling? Do any of them go this summer or next summer? Do we have to fight off bids? I think we've shown that we can't fight off bids. A, financial wise, we can't keep up. And B, the way Klopp runs things is we're not going to force somebody to stay once their head is turned.
Yeah, there's twofold there. As Klopp really likes his teams to be, want to be there, which is one of the reasons that I wasn't really that upset when we lost both guys to Chelsea. You don't really want somebody going in that previously or even in the media stated they didn't want to be here. So there's that. But then there's the other side of, we might not be able to entice the players to stay if the money's good. But, you also as a club, you have to value them a little bit higher than they're probably worth right now because we can't afford to lose any more midfielders or key players because, although we don't have a lot of or we have a lot of depth, in the attacking sense, you still don't want to lose those key players because, we need to score more goals than we put in this year, I think. So if we then big piece in the defense and it's all over.
Yeah, I guess Mateus says they would. I don't know how much I trust them. Now he'll probably tweet this out in 6 different formats to get more like clicks and retweets and stuff. But that we have made a move for him. I guess it depends on what the move is. Like, did we inquire about him? We're interested. We're monitoring. Where are we at over here? Like, which phase are we on? Or did we make a bid? It's going to be interesting. Spike says it's all about the money. Players are commodities. Fans want loyalty, but players have a limited time at the top play and earn money. And I think so. I just always wonder for certain players, like when does money become not as big of a motivating factor, like the diminishing returns? When do you say, yeah, that's great money, but other things come first? I don't know. I feel like, as an old fart myself over the years, obviously money is always important. We're nowhere near these guys where like money is key, but it feels like as initially, when you check the check, every dollar counts and it's very important. But as things go on, sometimes you make career decisions where, family is more important, or time with the family is more important, or being over here is more important, and stuff like that. You would think once you start making like ridiculous money, where really money is no factor, that other stuff become more important. But I think you see in Hendo that, for example, is a perfect example that is not the case. When big money comes around the corner, people just can't say no. Speaking of big money coming around the corner, let's talk about this a little bit. I know this is going to be one that we're going to like delve into, because I watched the mostly like the second half of this game. Onana seen here boxing with like two Wolves players after the ball is way gone. And this was not given. It did not even go to VAR. Somehow, 30 seconds after the game ended, Moss is like, yeah, that was bad, man. When are we going to be able to hear, Rami, what the hell happened here? Because them apologizing afterwards, first of all, they just gifted United 3 points, and an organization run by Webb. That's no shocker, right? That's a given. So that's one. But I look at the flip side of this. I mean, to us, that's the part that's freaking annoying. They should have been a draw at home, and they should have lost points. But Wolves, who actually looked a lot better than everybody thought, maybe because United is not as good as everybody thinks. But, initially when we did our predictions, a lot of people actually predicted Wolves to be relegated. At the end of the season, these 2 points, like a point, I guess they got robbed out of, right? Could be huge for them to stay up. Who's going to pick up the tab? These guys just not being a ref for a week is not going to keep Wolves up in Premier League.
Right, and it's like the apology after is kind of frustrating. It's like part of me is like, I would have wished they just stood by their decision at that point and just were stubborn about it. Like, what do you gain from an apology? It's kind of frustrating because that's happened to us before where they apologize and it's just like, okay, great. Like, is there going to be anything that comes of this? No. And, there's people like Tim Howard was saying in the post game that like, oh, that's never called, so it shouldn't be called this time. And I don't know if that's like a good enough reason for something like that. Like, that was a dangerous play and he didn't get anywhere near the ball. And I definitely think it was a penalty. The thing is, though, there's just no accountability for these referees. They can just make these wrong decisions all they like. And like you said, they get worst case scenario suspended for a week and then they're back on the next week. And so there's no accountability. There's no communication too. It's like, I'd love to hear what that conversation was like with the VAR room. Hear what, like, why wasn't it, why did he send him to the monitor? Why wasn't it given as a penalty, whatever? But we don't hear any of that. There's no communication and there's no accountability. And I think those two things for fans is extremely frustrating because if you come out and it's like, this is why we're not giving as a penalty, or, or this referee made a bad call, he's suspended for a month or fined or whatever. I think fans would start to feel a lot better. But when VAR was brought in to fix these type of mistakes and the VR is making that same mistake, it is very frustrating to watch as a fan. And it's frustrating when it happens to your own team, but it's also equally as frustrating just watching it as a neutral in any of these games because it affects the sport at the end of the day. So yeah, I would like to see this type of situation fixed, but I just feel like they have enough leverage. They've always had leverage, the referees, that I don't think anything will happen.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just watching an injustice happen in front of you is ridiculous the way it is. And when it's in the favor of United, again, that's when it raises like eyebrows and you're like, seriously, again? My brother, who's like a notorious like United fan, even he was like, oh, man, you guys always complain about refereeing. And he was out. And then he comes home and he was like, holy shit, that should be a penalty. That's pretty bad. So even United, I don't think there's a United fan out there right now saying, why would that even be a penalty? And Tim Howard, by the way, I mean, seriously, that was the biggest downer. I don't know if it was this the downer or the fact that Tim Howard is still on NBC Sports, but I think I understand what he's saying in terms of like these don't get called, Gordo, but normally it's because when goalies come out and miss the ball, yeah, it doesn't get called, but he's like literally hitting the guy that actually got the ball.
Yeah, I think this might start a Me Too movement for the players' organization because that is not even just a tackle; that's a molestation. There, I had to watch it back and be like, "Wait a minute, this isn't going to VAR." I honestly think that we should adopt the rug. I don't know if either of you guys watch rugby, but the refs and the refs in the booth are mic'd up to the stadium, not just to the people watching the game, but they're mic'd up to the stadium as well. You can hear the conversation between the guys watching the replay and the referees. I think that's what we need to adopt, because there has to be some accountability. And the other thing is, it's still ridiculous that this is one of the most expensive leagues in the world. It's the most watched league in the world. And these refs this is still not their full-time job. How is that possible? These guys this has to be what they do. They have to have camps. It has to be some kind of referees association where, they get a living wage, that this is the only thing that they do, because then finally maybe they can learn the rules, because what it looks like right now is they just decide as a fan. I think any one of us could be Premier League referees, because at this point it's just up to the referee on the day of what he decides to do. There's no consistency even amongst the referees. The same referee he'll get so annoyed by the media that he's just gotten from this, that he'll call every single collision for the rest of the year, and it'll be a penalty. And then for the rest of the year we'll be talking about, how was this a penalty in this game that wasn't a penalty in the other game? There's no accountability.
See, Sparky, so I'm not the only one. Maybe it's an older guy thing, because Sparky's around my age, I think. But yeah, it does look blue, doesn't it? But it's purple. See, that's the thing.
Yeah, it's purple. Don't worry. It's just the image. Yeah.
I thought the same thing. So then I don't know. The referee thing, I would love that rugby thing. And I think it's not being done because to protect them. I mean, even in like the NBA, we see it where they come in at the end, tell you what the hell happens to the TV audience and stuff like that. This is what we're doing, why, and stuff like that. At least when it goes to VAR, because we don't even know what the hell they look at sometimes when it goes to VAR. We just know that if they got called, it's probably going to get overturned, which that's not even, that doesn't even make sense either. Like they're like, oh, they called him, so it's going to get overturned kind of thing. The moment somebody's called over, it's going to get overturned, but you never get that conversation of why they're being called, like what was talked about in this case. But I think it's protecting them. I guess my thing is, Gordo, Rami, it's not really changing anything when you're just suspending a guy for a week. I mean, I've been in management. If a guy comes into work, has a shit day, being a jerk, just in a bad mood, bad attitude, and all I do is, dude, why don't you go home for the day? I don't think anybody else who's working that day is appreciating that. I mean, you manage a crew there, Gordo. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, you sending that guy home is not really punishing that guy for the money, especially if he's just going to show up next week and he's continuing to collect the paycheck. What should be the punishment when something is this obvious, Rami, that the guy thinks twice, but at the same time, like Gordo is saying, this is a side gig. So I don't know, whatever we do really is going to punish him.
Right. I don't know if there's one solution for this. I think maybe like a strike system. It's like, okay, if you like be evaluated by like an independent committee or whatever, and if you make a bad call once, then you're suspended. And if you do it twice, then you're like on probation for or like whatever probationary period. If you do it like a third time, then you're like done as a referee. Just something like that, like a strike system. Just I don't know, anything to provide some accountability, because it's like you both mentioned. There's no reason for a ref to even want to get better. They have these side gigs. They're not really trained like as much as they should be, and this and that. So it's just hard to watch, like I said, as a fan, where you're just constantly like just guessing, like, is this a penalty? Is that not? Like in our match with the handball, it's like, was that a penalty or no? You don't really know, because every week it's something different.
Yes.
And that's the hard part, is just there's no consistency and no accountability. And so what they do to, I guess, punish these refs, I don't know. Fines, maybe fine them monetarily. That's always a good way to get to people, is affect their paycheck. But at the end of the day, it really should be on the Premier League. The Premier League should want to be like, oh, we want the best product possible. Let's, do whatever it takes. But it seems like they're kind of just like, oh, like okay with it being like this, because I think, for them, it generates talking points and clicks and this and that. And, it might not be the best publicity, but like they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity at the end of the day. So, So I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen with this, because it's been it's been a thing my whole life, watching refs mess up. And then, like I said, I thought VAR would come in and be like, okay, no, we're gonna fix this. And then guys who were watching it from 100 different angles are still making the wrong decision. So it's hard to say. And I don't know if it's just me, but I think it's just kind of exclusive to the English league. Like the World Cup, you didn't really hear about a ton of these controversies, or even in some of the other leagues, like, there obviously is, because it's human error, but it doesn't feel like to the same extent as the Premier League, where it's like every week there's multiple decisions that you can point to and be like, what's going on there? So I would like to see a change for sure. I just don't know if it's even in the Premier League's best interest to do that at this point.
I mean, that's the thing. It's a league that spends freaking like 5 billion or whatever every year on players. You would think it should be held to, I guess, a higher standard than, I don't know, like the Turkish league or something like that. But Sparky says I want clarity, not punishment, which is fair. But I want to know as a fan the conversation, like, how is this not a? Because if we're saying to each other, how was that not a penalty? I want, yes, somebody to tell us, well, this is why, because Onana can punch people, or because it's United, whatever the explanation is. I just want to hear that. And I think we can kind of say, okay, so that's your explanation. So next week, if you give me an explanation that contradicts it, then we can go and say, well, wait a second now, you said this last week. And that's thing, we thought VAR was going to solve these issues, and it has not. I mean, tell you what, over time I've gotten more and more used to it, and I kind of like appreciate it, because you see some calls that they're like, holy shit, how the hell did they miss this kind of a thing initially. But at the same time, man, if we're going to affect the game, let's just freaking get it right. I mean, especially when they're spending so long to watch it. How you watch that so many times? Is Tim Howard there saying, like, in the background, like, these never get called? So they're like, okay, I guess we shouldn't call it. I just don't understand. I would love to hear that. And I don't think we will, because that does not really protect them. Because, like Sparky, they don't want the clarity, I think, because clarity shows afterwards incompetence, because you have to admit incompetence over and over and over again. And I think, it's easier to admit incompetence than say, oh, the dude had the bad call, as opposed to saying incompetence in terms of this whole freaking system is jacked up. None of us are on the same page and stuff. I think that kind of shows the bigger incompetence, as opposed to just saying, yeah, he fucked up. Sorry about that. You're suspended, by the way. And then, like, we'll see you next week. As opposed to saying, yes, none of us are on the same page. Nobody knows what a handball is and stuff. I mean, we went through this in the US, right? With NFL, where nobody knew what the catch was. Like, no one. And so, and I don't know, we kind of do now. They worked on it, but it's still like kind of unclear. So before we go, let's talk about this, because this is, I don't know how we look at this. Is this good or bad? So Messi is just spanking around Major League Soccer over here. It almost looks a little bit too easy. I watched, and I will admit, it does make even a guy like me, who doesn't normally follow. I got nothing against MLS, but I just don't watch it. I just don't like it overall, the quality. And I think the artificial turf is what really gets me the most. But anyway, I watched the second half of a game. And see, this is how bad it is. I don't know who they were playing, because I was just watching Miami and Messi. I couldn't tell you who they were playing. That's pretty bad, actually, now that I think about it. But I just watched them play, and it's easy. It's like us playing with kids a little bit. You kind of like, he's kind of like walking around, and I know he did in Barcelona. He kind of like walks around, and he was like, okay, let's do something, and then he just like makes a run and stuff like that. Is him dominating this league, Rami, the way he is, a good thing in terms of everybody going around and saying, yeah, see, that's why they're not that good, because he's the only one that came over here as opposed to the Saudi league. I'm not like counting Jordi Alba and stuff. Or is it going to do what everybody wanted, everybody watching it, and therefore more people coming here?
That's a good question, because it goes both ways. I think part of the reason why Messi is getting so much publicity is because he's dominating. Everyone's like, oh, look at what he's doing. If he came here and kind of just, retired early, just kind of put his feet up, I don't think anybody would have really, I think people still would have talked about it, but I don't think anybody would have really gotten the same publicity as it is now. Like, I watched part of that game yesterday, and he had a goal and I think an assist. And for me, like you said, I would never watch an MLS game. Inter Miami versus Philadelphia Union has nowhere on the radar for me. And so it definitely does generate publicity. But like I said, the question is it a good thing for Major League Soccer? And I do think, I don't know if it's a good thing for Major League Soccer, but I think it's good for the sport in America. I think, because those are two different things. I think the league itself is just capitalizing on the money that it's making. But I think you're going to have a lot of kids who, would have never really had the opportunity to even watch a player like Messi in their life, can now go to the stadium. Well, I don't know if they can go to the stadium because tickets are $600, but they can see him, locally or whatever. And it's going to inspire a whole new generation, I feel like, here in the United States. So in that regard, I think it is a good thing, but it feels a bit, for lack of a better term, artificial. It's like, I always compare, it's like if LeBron James went to Taiwan and started putting up 100 points a game there. It's like, okay, great, we know you're good at the sport, dude. Like, it's not anything new, but it's just more of the fact that, like I said, I think it's just going to inspire a generation that really would have not had opportunity to see a player like this before. So it's a good thing and a bad thing in a way, but I'm just excited to see as a Messi fan. Just, I feel like he still could have played in Europe for a little bit, but just seeing him just, smile and have fun and just kind of like, it's a different change of pace for sure.
Who was the one that went to Taiwan? What's the center's name?
Dwight Howard.
Dwight Howard. Yeah, nobody said, oh man, Dwight Howard still got it. I mean, it was just like, yeah, okay, you're just playing with kids over. It's not even fair. They were like, dude, come back over here. Like, you just abusing people over there, kind of a thing, more than anything else. Is that the feeling that you're getting, Gordo, where they're like, okay, stop fucking with them. Like, you just come back over here and play properly. Or is it going to be something that has baby people like me even keep it on? I guess Sparky still doesn't watch it, but if it's on, Angie and I were just flipping, and then we're like, oh, it is on right now. We were gonna watch something else on Apple TV. It happened to be on. It's not like I'm looking at Miami's schedule, and we sat and watched 20-25 minutes of it or something like that. Is it going to get people more to watch? Not only him, maybe next week I'm going to turn it on. It's going to be a different game, and I'm going to be like, oh, let me check it out. Will it bring more people to the sport and the league? I think we lost Gordo. Kelly says, I agree. Great for the youth, but for us, it's almost frustrating because it's not truly about the game. It's about the money. And that's the thing. I kind of like that in that sense, where kind of like what you're saying, Rami. I think we totally lost poor Gordo over here, by the way. But like, more people will be interested. I think what you're saying is we're gaining more people to the game as opposed to people who were interested being more interested, right? Because I feel like people who are already interested in the game probably know that Messi is like a level above everybody else anyway.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's going to bring the casual American fan in is more the thing. It's like now we have like pages like Bleacher Report, Sports Center talking about it that really never really mentioned football. Even during the World Cup, they maybe talk about during the finals. And so, I think it's definitely going to bring eyes to it. Like, I have friends who don't even care about the sport, but like, oh my gosh, are you seeing what Messi's doing? Things like that. And I think, like I said, I think it's good just more for the youth system. I think when you have a player that's like in your own backyard that you can. Because before we had like Beckham or Zlatan or whoever were kind of like the tail end of their career, and you could tell that they're just here for the retirement paycheck, whatever. But Messi is still like putting in performances, and you can still tell that he's one of the best players of the world. And I think that's good for for the league. I mean, for the American youth system. So I don't know. I don't think it's like it's necessarily a bad thing, but in terms of sustainability, that's kind of what I always point to, and I don't know how sustainable it really is.
And that's the thing, like Kelly says, I feel bad for the actual diehard Major League Soccer players where this is their career because they love the game and the league. Messi comes in and takes all the credit. And that's the thing. But at the same time, they were not getting the attention, I guess, by themselves. Anyway, you almost needed to bring it in. Sparky says all the kids know who Messi is. They watch Spanish football. But that's the thing. You are watching Major League Soccer now where you wouldn't. Or I think we look at it as fans a little bit where, I mean, I'm kind of like holding this like a sport. I'm trying to find a sport that I'm not interested in, and I don't care if Messi and Ronaldo could be pitching. I'm not gonna still watch baseball. But if it's a sport that I'm not too interested in my own country, and somebody comes in that is so good that I'm like, what is all the talk about? So I go and watch it. Because of that, and before you know it, I'm like, man, this is not a bad sport at all. Is that what we're going to end up happening? I don't know if Gordo is back with us in full capacity. Nope, he's not. He's still frozen in time. He's watching Messi. He's just like frozen. Do you think it will gain more fans? More importantly, but though, like you're saying, is it just while Messi is here, the moment Messi is gone, they're going to be like, nah, I'm going back to American football.
Yeah, that's and that's the thing. Like I said, it's all about sustainability. With Messi's case, though, I do think you're going to have some fans who stick around. I even noticed it, like, not necessarily, it's not the same thing, but with the World Cup, a lot of people kind of got into football for the first time with the World Cup, and then have kind of stuck around, watched the Premier League, watched the Champions League this year, things like that. I have friends who ask me, like, oh, what Premier League team should I support? And I'm like, that's kind of really up to you. You know, I would say Liverpool, but I'm biased or whatever. So I think Messi's going to have that same effect just here in the MLS, where people are like, oh, the sport's not that bad. You know, a lot of people think football is just 0-0, always just passing the ball around. But when they see, you know, there's some excitement to it, Messi, you know, brings some excitement, then I think a lot of people just be like, oh, the sport's really not that bad. Let me give it a shot. I think that's really all you can ask for. It's just, you know, to give the sport a fair shot. And I think Messi might be able to provide that.
I always was like, you know, I always go back to when I first came over here, and you know, if you are Turkish, or honestly, that's, I don't know if it's any better now when I'm so old that American football was not really much of a thing in Europe at all, including England and everything. I don't know if it is now, because I know they do games over there and stuff. But when you know, you only see one play from Super Bowl as like and yeah, the Americans had their final, by the way, kind of a thing in the sports. And then if it's a 1 yard run, it's just like a bunch of big dudes falling all over each other, and then one team starts celebrating. You're like, man, this is like a really stupid game. And then you come over here like without knowing anything. I really think it is really more than Messi. I really think it's more on Apple TV and the commentators and the broadcasting to keep people and to teach people the sport if you're bringing new people in. If you're going to be just there, and that's what I don't like from what I'm seeing, it's all like, look at Messi coughing. He coughs so good. And, you know, and just explain the game, use this new audience to kind of like grow the game, as opposed to just grow. Messi doesn't need any more growing. Messi is already big. You brought this audience to watch the dude already. I mean, I remember like when I first came here, people in the US always talk shit about like Madden. And I always tell the story that, you know, while people were like, man, duh, he points out the obvious. So a guy like me that was teaching the game. I was watching, I was listening, and I was like, oh, that's why they did that. Oh, that's why that's happening and stuff. I wish they did more of that with the audience, as opposed to just kind of like the entire game. It was more like, look at what Messi is doing. He does everything so good. It's like, just tell us what he's doing then. Like, just don't, you know, I see what he's doing, but I guarantee you, somebody who doesn't know the sport, like if you don't know American football, you're not gonna watch a play and say, oh wow, great blocking there, until somebody shows you the blocking and how they shifted and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where we're at. I think, okay, finally moving enough frozen in time is Gordo. Before we go, let's get your take on this whole Messi thing. Do you think it brings new people in? Do you think it is kind of like consistent? Are these people going to stay here, or him dominating is only showing that the league is well below all the other leagues?
I think that what it does is introduces a new group of people who's never seen the sport, and they quickly move to the Premier League. I don't think that, I don't like, once you like the sport and you're like, what? This is like it's like almost a different language, the Premier League to the MLS. It's very, you know, the MLS still does drafts. You know, by that time, you know, we're talking about the peaks of players' careers by the time they leave college in Europe. I mean, like Trent Alexander-Arnold has already won everything that you could possibly win in top division, and he's what, 22, 23. So like at that point, you're getting drafted into the MLS, which is already like a third-rate league. So I think it's introducing people to the sport who's never seen it before. It's becoming mainstream, and then they quickly find something else because the commentary is awful. I mean, you saw it with the World Cup, which infuriated everyone. You know, like, this is the World Cup, and you're like, let's do a glossary index, you know, and then they had Chad Ochocinco going around and like, hey, I love the nachos over here. These are great. It's like, what is this? This is an embarrassment. This is like, you know, how do you expect the U.S. men's national team to advance when your own fan base like can't even like stand the commentary?
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest like disappointment to me when I watch like Apple TV and like see the commentary and stuff, like even on ESPN. But I just don't know. I'm looking at it as a Turkish guy who's already a soccer fan. I just don't know. We got to bring on like just a regular old American who's not into soccer and who's just starting soccer, and see how they're viewing it. Is it really kind of like appealing to both sides, introducing the sport while keeping the media American, if you will? Or I mean, I feel like aside from Tim Howard, NBC Sports does an excellent job. I really like their commentator and stuff like that. Except Tim Howard, I cannot underline that enough. But did I mention I can't freaking stand Tim Howard?
The only American on there too, which is funny. Yeah.
And I don't know that. I mean, that's not really why. Though I know what you're saying, but
Yeah.
that's not really why. You would think, you would hope it would be somebody. I don't understand how Tim Howard does this professionally, and then he's supposed to call out highlights at halftime, and he acts like he has never seen the sport before. Like just literally, like it would be me like trying to commentate like Australian rules football or something like that. Saying, like, and then that guy started running with that, and then kicked it, and like he's just like learning and trying to figure things out as he's watching it. It's just Sparky says two Robbies are shit too. I don't mind the Robbies. This totally got like off topic over here, but what do you guys feel about the Robbies, by the way? Because I don't mind them. They're like a little typical. They kind of like ride the wave when the team is doing good. They kind of like hammer it when they're not. But at least they don't come across as, man, these guys are so clueless. Where are you at with the Robbies, Gordo?
The they're better than what's the other guy, the Joe guy, Joe Prince, right? What, I forget what his name is, but he's got a show too, and he's got two Americans on there, and that is absolute trash. So it makes the two Robbies, like when you're watching the highlight reel, they have like this on Peacock, you can kind of scroll through, and it's only like clips of everybody's shows, and I watch it on the treadmill sometimes. So it's like 9 minutes on this show, 9 minutes on this show, kind of highlights, and it makes the two Robbies sound like Leonardo da Vinci and Picasso compared to these other guys, because the one dude, they're talking about before the Liverpool Chelsea game, how they're going to line up, and they're talking about Liverpool they're going to play this unique possession game now, which we're not used to seeing from them, and there won't be a whole lot of goals. And then like 2 sentences later, he's like, they're just going to have to score more than the other team scores. It's like, what? Did you even read your own analysis? Because you just contradicted the approach that they're going to take. You can't have a possession game and try not to score the other team on a fast counter. It just doesn't work. So they're not the worst they have.
Yeah, maybe like Tim Howard says the bar is so low, they just like kind of like step over it, and then we're like, we're good over here. Where are you at with the Robbies, Rami?
I mean, I don't mind them. It's like Gordo was saying, if you compare them to other people, it's kind of, it is better than nothing. They do really just politically correct, toe the line, whatever. And I was thinking about this the other day. I think we're kind of blessed with our American soccer coverage, like between the Champions League on CBS, like Kate Abdo and Thierry Henry and that group. I think that's a great commentary. I think NBC does a really good job of just making the sport readily available. I just kind of look at like in England, how I think it's the 8 p.m. kickoff is just blacked out there. You can't even watch it. Things like that, where it's like here, I think we have better access to the sport, surprisingly. And just, I look at the Sky Sports, like see some of the clips on Twitter of like Roy Keane and these other guys just argue brainlessly for 2 hours. It's kind of different than, here where there's actually some analysis. At least they attempt to give you some analysis, and they show you all the games and all the highlights and this and that. So I think, we're kind of blessed in that regard as American fans, but I just don't think we really appreciate it enough, because I've seen like other countries' coverage, and it is better here, that surprisingly, than in a lot of places.
I mean, I don't agree with everything they say, and sometimes obviously they say stuff you don't like, but I really like Lee Dixon and Lasso as they talk, because as I was saying earlier, I feel like there's a lot of like perspective being given from a player as a player. Like saying things like that's what you do and stuff like that, and especially maybe because they're like, well, defenders I can relate to a lot more, like the things they look at, the things they bring up. Obviously you're not gonna agree with everything they say. It's kind of like really difficult to agree with everything a commentator says, but I feel like they do a good job of explaining the game or what's happening and stuff like that. When they watch a highlight, it's not like Tim I was saying, and then he kicked it to the guy wearing 8, and then he kicks it to the other guy and stuff. Like they're actually like explaining what's happening, and I think that's golden. Like Sparky says, in terms of Robbies, I'm assuming never won a thing and never that good. I don't really care if the player, like they were good as a player, because sometimes like somebody like Keane or somebody like that, sometimes you get these really good accomplished guys like think way too highly of themselves and talk down to everybody. So that to me is a bigger turnoff than like an average dude saying, I mean, And maybe there's another thing, like Lee Dixon and Rival and stuff always like rip on themselves, rip on each other. They don't take themselves so serious that I was the best shit around and stuff. They readily admit that they would have no place. Neither one of them would never play right now, probably. Especially Dixon would never be able to play right now, I think, in the current Premier League and stuff. But you want to see more clueless people who have not won a whole lot? Tune in tonight where we do. I don't know. Maybe the guests might be accomplished, but I'll be hosting, so there's that. We're gonna do the Premier League panel show tonight for the first time. Pretty excited about that. Get some different perspectives. First time in a long time or ever, I think, gonna be outnumbered by fans who are not Liverpool fans. So 8 o'clock Central, that's gonna be a live show as well. So join us then with your comments and everything as these guys stuff. Give them some harassments. Arsenal, Fulham, and Villa being represented. It's a lot of London tonight, and me. So we'll see you guys then. Thanks a lot, boys, as always, and we'll see you guys tonight at the panel show. Take care, everyone.
We'll see you. Thank you.